Hey there, folks. Welcome to another Questions podcast. Coming back after the holidays, and you can see the surroundings about me. It's a little chilly here in southwest Ohio, but I thought I'd come out here and share this beautiful scenery with you today. But I want to talk about a subject that's not very beautiful, and that is, today we're going to discuss the question of abortion. I'm recording this the week before the annual recognition of the Roe v. Wade decision. Roe v. Wade was the Supreme Court decision that legalized abortion in America and happened on January the 22nd. So I am just a few days before that at this recording. You know, in America, there's really not a whole lot that prevents the slaughter of children except for the voice of the church. There aren't very many others who are speaking out against it. And so I just really felt like, I don't want to go into all the politics about it, and there's plenty of that. I really want to talk about the foundation of, the biblical foundation of why abortion is not right. It's murder, and we need to stand for life, not because we don't like murder, that's maybe reason enough, but because God says not to do it. We need to know what He says. And so I brought my Bible, and there are lots of passages in the Bible that tell us about murder and why we shouldn't be engaged in it. But there's one in particular that's right here at the very beginning of your Bible. It's not hard to find at all. It's right here in chapter 1 of the book of Genesis in verses 26 and verse 27. The very first part in verse 26, God said, "Let us make man in our image after our likeness." And then in verse 27 it says, "So God created man in His own image. In the image of God created He him. Male and female created He them." So God does a work, and that work is special with men. There is no other thing during the created week that God made in His image except for men. And so we become the image bearers of God. And you'll hear a lot of times people talk about the sanctity of human life, and this is what they mean. It's sanctified because God has made it in His image. We're special because of that. And because of that, there are special rules that go with human life. Now, I said there are other passages. This is one. You can also go to Genesis chapter 9 with the Noahic covenant, God's decree about murder and how that should be treated. You can also look in other places. For example, Psalm 139, David talks about being in his mother's womb. And Jeremiah, his calling was from the womb. And so the specialness of the human created in the image of God is demonstrated in those passages and many, many others. And the church needs to stand on that foundation so that we can clearly communicate to everyone that this is God's will, that men be treated with that kind of specialness, and that we don't willfully slaughter innocents. But today in America and in many other parts of the world, the altar of Molech has been rebuilt. The altar of Molech was an altar where children were sacrificed back in the ancient Babylonian and Palestinian times. Molech was one of the gods, and they would sacrifice children. So a man and his wife would have a child. They would bring that child to the altar of Molech, and the child would be killed to propitiate the god and to gain the god's favor. Now, we don't do it perhaps for the same reasons, and there are altars today with fiery idols where children can be slain, but we are still killing people for the wrong reasons, or children for the wrong reasons, and for many of the same reasons, to find favor and to escape the responsibility of the child and so forth. We're doing it for all the wrong reasons. And so in America, that's happening, and I know it's happening in other places around the world. We have perverted the idea of the image of God, and we are adopting the theology of Molech, that slaughtering our children will create some sort of benefit for us, and it never does. Listen, here's my position on this whole topic of abortion. Every life is sacred. Every life is special. And whether the child is conceived through consensual sex or whether the child is conceived by some sort of crime of rape or incest or whatever, That's not the child's fault. Why would we kill the child over something that someone else does? This is a person. Let me tell you a little story, one that I often use when I teach this subject. There was a young lady, and she had a busy day, and she needed to go to several places and make some trips and make some errands and buy some groceries and things. So she goes out, jumps in her car, and she's traveling to all the different spots she needs to go to. She comes to a certain intersection, and a gentleman driving a truck plows through the intersection, and they have a wreck. Now, neither one of them are hurt, but both of the cars are greatly damaged. Of course, they're very angry with one another. He thinks she's at fault. She thinks he's at fault. And the police show up, and they're trying to figure out what happened. And both the lady and the gentleman, they're both yelling at each other and accusing one another, and they won't listen to reason. And the policeman happens to look over to the side and sees a bystander on the sidewalk. And the bystander has seen everything but hasn't said a word. And so the policeman walks over to the bystander, pulls out his service revolver, and shoots the bystander dead. And there the bystander lay on the sidewalk. He walks back over to the arguing couple who have now witnessed the policeman kill the bystander. And the policeman says, "There you go. That settles it. Go about your way." Policeman jumps in the squad car and he takes off. The lady gets in her car and she limps off, and the man gets in his truck and he limps off, and it's all done. And the only person who paid any price for the wreck was the bystander, who wasn't even involved. He just happened to be witnessing the wreck. And that's exactly what we're doing with abortion. We're killing the bystanders. It's not the child's fault that you had sex out of wedlock and now you're pregnant. Why would you want to kill the child? That makes absolutely no sense. Whose fault was it? It wasn't the child's fault. If you were raped or something else unforeseen happened and now you want to have an abortion, why would you kill the child? It's not the child's fault. Let's remember that these children are the image of God. They are image bearers. And so we need to treat them with the same specialness and respect that we treat any other human. They're alive, and they deserve the chance to live their life and not be sacrificed on the altar of convenience, which is what is happening today. The altar of Molech was not an altar of convenience, it was an altar of propitiation, and we're doing exactly the same thing. We're wanting the gods of fate to smile on us, and we can't be burdened down with some child that would get in the way of our advancement. And so we sacrifice them. The innocents, who the only crime they committed was being there at the wrong time. Well, the church needs to stand up and say these things. They're not easy things to say, but the church needs to stand up and say them. I hope this encourages you, and I hope that you'll take some time to search the scriptures and see if these things are so. God bless you guys. I hope to see you next time on the Questions Podcast.